So, why am I here? What am I talking about? I'm a same-sex attracted man, have been and still am. I had a long journey, both with God by my side, but through the world and through dark places. I worked as a porn actor for several years and as a sex worker, while instinctively knowing that I was on the wrong path. And then I worked my way, with God's help, I worked my way out of this place, and now I'm here as a very happy family father, hopefully enough loving husband and loving father, and also a member and supporter of the Scottish Family Party, because being on both sides, I have seen that one side gets full support by politicians, by the media, and the other side, the side that, from my point of view now, is the healthier side, is being demonized. So, I'm here to tell my story, and I will tell my story roughly in a few different parts. First, my walking with God since I was born, but maybe not in the way that most Christians are used to. Some of my experiences, some ways how I experienced God and my journey through faith might be unusual for some of you, but I'm gonna tell the story the way that I experienced it as I lived my life, so to speak. At the end, I hope that we're gonna have a little bit of time, and I'm very open to every question. So, who am I? My name is Philip Tanzer. I'm 46 years old. I am and was same-sex attracted. When I was younger, I was pushed towards embracing a gay lifestyle, and I was pushed towards identifying as gay. As I already mentioned, I did work as a porn actor and as a sex worker, and at one point in my life, I started walking away from that lifestyle, and I started walking closer and closer towards God, and also in that these were two different things for me, walking closer towards the church. So, first I'm going to talk about my journey with God. I felt God in my life ever since I was born, I would say, or as long as I can remember. And I didn't grow up in a Christian family. I grew up in Germany, and Germany is, broadly speaking, Christian, but there is no real Christian culture. There's just, well, some people have their children baptized, but then you stop going to church, and you might go to church on Christmas. I assume you know that situation because it's the same here in Scotland. So I was born in 1977, and I was born to a loving father, a loving mother, loving grandparents on my mother's side, and an older brother, 2 years older. The circumstances were wealthy. We were a well-situated family, and there was no massive family trauma in my case. But even as a child, and though I didn't grow up in a Christian family, I did feel very deeply connected to God. So deeply that I actually felt that my biological father wasn't my real father. And I thought God is my father, or an angel was my father. And when I was about 5, 6 years old, I actually thought, oh God, I might be Jesus. Which was very daunting because, I mean, you don't want to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. But because I didn't know scripture, I just, the only reference point to somebody who was born to a mother but had a father in heaven, was Jesus. And over the years I realized, I'm not Jesus, thank you. But the connection to God and to angels stayed as strong as it was. Now, I said I didn't grow up with trauma, but I think I did, because I felt separated from my father. And though I had a biological father, I didn't feel strongly connected to my father. And I felt that here on earth there was something lacking. And I started to obsess about having a father here, somebody who could be strong. My father is a good man, but he's not a very strong, manly man, and maybe not what I needed as a boy. So I never read the scripture because, and there I had some arrogance in me, because I felt like, I'm so strongly connected to God that I can hear God. And I don't need the Bible, because the Bible will just confirm what I already know, and it's probably misinterpreted anyways, and mistranslated and all that. You've heard these arguments. So I walked my way through life with God by my side, but without guidance through Scripture. And looking back, that brought me into the situations that I ended up in. And I don't know if that was good or not, because without these situations I wouldn't be here right now talking to you. And though God doesn't want us to sin, that is very clear, He will use our sin to get us to a point where we are useful. And I always felt that it was my job here on earth to work for God. And maybe, I'm not saying that's the case, but maybe my arrogance and my lack of knowledge about the scripture led me into these dark places to see them for myself and see that later on that everything that is written in scripture is correct. Everything that the Bible warns you of, there is a good reason for that. And I know that not because I was a Christian and I believed in the Bible, but because I lived it and I could see that it wasn't good for me. So, the second part of my journey, is my journey through homosexuality. It's very hard to say when I first was attracted to men, but I don't remember a time when that wasn't the case. As long as I could feel some kind of attraction or tendency towards a gender, I was attracted to men, and I do think that it has to do with that father trauma. When I was maybe 8 years old, I found a stack of nude magazines on my parents' attic. It was about 20 Playboy magazines with naked women and one Playgirl magazine with naked men. And I was only interested in one of these magazines. And you could say maybe because I was a boy and the other gender, when you're very young, is still very alien, and you're only interested in, oh, that's me. But it had a very strong impact on me. And I know that later on my attraction to men and what kind of man I am and was attracted to, I do think in part stems from that magazine when I was about 8 years old. So that goes to show you how much something very small can influence you all through your life, in positive ways and in negative ways. I continued to walk through my life with that looking for masculinity, but I also had an obsession with weird things. And I became a massive fan of Alice Cooper, the rock singer, Marilyn Manson, and Prince. And at one point, I went to school, and oh yeah, my mother, she was quite concerned that my brother and I, that we would grow up too boring, too normal. Yeah, well, that didn't happen. And she actually gave us heavy metal t-shirts, even though we didn't listen to heavy metal, and she gave me one of her leather trousers. And I loved my mother, and I was like, oh, I want to make her happy. So I wore these leather trousers to school. And a guy in school, he called me a faggot. And I put him against the wall. And in that moment, I thought to myself, I have two choices now. Either I conform with what people want me to do, or I do what I think is right, even if that is uncomfortable for myself. So I started wearing dresses, wearing the most outrageous outfits, nail polish, makeup, you name it. Nowadays, they probably would have pushed me towards identifying as transgender, which I absolutely wasn't, and I knew that. I was like, I'm a guy, and I want to annoy people, or I want to push the boundaries. While my father wasn't very happy with that, he didn't bring arguments why it wasn't good for me. And I would say in conversations I was always better at presenting my arguments. And that will be a recurring theme, that nobody challenged me with knowledge and with confidence. So because I looked the way I looked, and because of my same-sex attraction, obviously I had to think about who am I, what am I, and I started to call myself, as a teenager, I called myself asexual with a tendency towards men, because I had no interest in actually sexually engaging with men, but I was, as I said, attracted to them. I could feel that deep in my heart I wasn't ready to have any intimacy with a person. And my heart says, wait. Figure yourself out, figure your stuff out. But society kept saying, oh, so you're gay. And I was like, no. I'm same-sex attracted, I'm asexual with a tendency towards men. Oh, come on, be proud. It's okay to be gay. And I was like, I know that's okay, but give me some time. No. We can't deal with that. We can't deal with you not being in a box. So I said, okay, if that's easier for you, I'm gay. Before that happened, my brother actually came out as gay. And my brother is quite a boring fella. So I was the outrageous one, and then my brother came out as gay. And I was like, well, that made it easier for me to come out as whatever. Nowadays, they would probably say queer. And so I was surrounded by a society that didn't judge me at all. Everything was fine. Nobody challenged it. My grandmother challenged my brother a little bit, and my brother couldn't deal with that at all. She didn't even question me. She just asked me if I was safe, if I was looking after myself. And I said, yeah, don't worry about me. I'm looking after myself. And that was that. Because I didn't have a Christian surrounding, nobody sat down with me saying, hey, Shep, is that something we can talk about? Why do you feel that way? Are there other options? Do you feel pressured into something? And by the way, that is the same for straight people and gay people. I mean, so many, like all of the straight guys and girls, they're pressured into having sex before they're ready, before they're married. So what I'm talking about is not just about gay people. It's a human experience. I started, coincidentally, kind of slipping into the gay scene. I went to an Alice Cooper concert, and after the concert I didn't have a place to sleep in that city in Munich, and I was walking around looking like Alice Cooper with the weird makeup and all, and I was asking people on the street, is there like a club, a disco that I could go to? And this person said, well, the way that you look, maybe that place. and that was a gay bar or a gay disco, and that was my first experience in a gay surrounding, and I didn't like it. People were incredibly superficial. Everything was very sexual, very, I don't know. I didn't like it. People didn't see each other. They didn't really look at each other. And again, you find that in the straight community as well, in the club scene. And that's how I started sliding into the gay community. I knew that I didn't like that part, like the party, the pop gay scene. So I started to drift into the leather scene, where people have fetishes and do really weird stuff. The people in that area are usually much older, and I was still asexual, so I didn't interact with people, but I had really good conversations about politics, life, even religion, and in the, like, just 5 meters next to us there was a sex room where people were abusing each other, and I was sitting at the bar talking to people about philosophy. So it was weird, I was walking on the edge, never really falling into that. Never drank alcohol, I never took drugs, and I didn't have sex, luckily. Otherwise I probably wouldn't be here today. At one point, I saw in a magazine, in a gay magazine, "Become German Mr. Leather," which is like the official representative of everything weird and fetish and screwed up. And I could feel in my heart, you're supposed to do that. And I do think, like back then I said, it was God's voice telling me that I should do that. Now I don't know. I cannot say that it was God's voice, and I cannot say it wasn't. But I participated in this competition as the youngest person ever. I don't remember how old I was, but I was relatively young. And I entered this competition because I felt in my heart, you're supposed to speak up against this promiscuity and abusing each other and taking drugs and judging each other, because there's, believe it or not, a lot of prejudice and hatred within the gay community. And I was like, somebody has to say something. So I became German Mr. Leather. And I did that for a year. And it led to me having a complete emotional breakdown, because I was at gay events every weekend, handing out condoms, talking to people, writing columns. And at one point, even though I every step of the way, I could feel God's hand protecting me. I didn't know scripture, but I could feel God protecting me, preventing me from drifting deeper into this lifestyle. But at one point, the darkness became so strong around me that I just couldn't deal with it anymore, and I had a bit of an emotional breakdown. And after that year, I moved away from that scene, and I said, okay, I don't have to go to any of these parties anymore. And I lived a pretty quiet life as a rock DJ, living in a small garden house with my dog. But I ran out of money. And just a second, I think this one needs maybe a little change. So, it's a little magic trick. Yeah, I ran out of money. And when I was German Mr. Leather, I did get in touch, or I did talk to people that worked in the porn industry. And I never liked porn. I always thought what's depicted there is always abusive. There is no love in it, there is no intimacy in it. There's no love, there is no intimacy in it. And I thought, I'm gonna change that. I'm gonna make really, really good porn. Like loving porn, where people really care about each other. That was the plan. I went to my dad and said, hey Dad, how do you feel about me becoming a porn actor? And he was like, well, I don't know, son. But I convinced him. I had great arguments. I had really good arguments how mature I am and that I know what I'm doing, and the porn industry just needs a moral compass. And that was me. So I applied in a company in America, and they flew me over, and I have to say something. Within the dark area of life that I walked, I met the nicest possible people within that area. And I'm eternally grateful for that, because these people protected me from getting really destroyed. Like my boss there, he said, Philip, you could work for a lot of companies, but I would not be able to protect you from bad experiences. If you work for us, I can make sure that it's not going to be awful. You make less money, but we will be there for you. And also, please never take drugs. Don't take steroids to get a better body. I mean, that's crazy that somebody from that industry would actually look out for someone. I tell you that because I want to tell you, God works in weird ways, and even in dark places, He can send people that unknowingly help you. So I worked there, and and though it didn't destroy me, looking back, I can tell you, there is not a single situation where you use your body like this where it isn't abusive. It always is. Even if the people that you work with are incredibly kind, you always do it for the money. And even if they say, look, if you don't want to work with this person, you don't have to. You think, but I'm losing money. Or I don't want to be looked at as a diva who's difficult to work with. So in the end, you start agreeing to stuff that you're not comfortable with. It'll always happen. And that also always happens for every porn actor. The money at one point runs out, but there's more money in working as a prostitute, especially if you work in movies. So a lot of my former colleagues started to work as escorts, selling themselves to people to having sex. And to be honest, that is worse. I was in a lucky position. I did something similar. I did erotic massages. I don't have to go into detail what that entailed. But it actually, because how it worked, it protected me from being abused. I was in control. But at one point, the German tax collector found out that I didn't pay taxes on me working in porn movies, because one of my customers, he ratted me out. And all of a sudden, I had potentially 50,000 euro in debt from one day to the other. By that point, I had already moved to Scotland and I had started building a house here. And then I felt, oh my God, where shall I get that money from? And I thought, maybe I make more money if I don't just do massages, but actually sell sex. I tried that for 3 days. These were probably the 3 darkest days of my life. Because people... Go to mama. Because people contacted me like a piece of meat. And they tricked me. And I'm going to go into one detail, because I want you to know how dark that can be. This person contacted me and said, I want to book you for the whole night. How much is that? And I came up with a number. And I wasn't used to having sex because I was still pretty asexual, even as a porn actor. I never enjoyed having sex. And I said, well, you can book me for the night, but there is like a limit of what we can do. Let's say twice? And he was like, no, pay you for the night. I'm going to do with you whatever I want to, and I don't care if you scream, I don't care if you suffer, if you bleed. And then I collapsed. And the next day I went to the tax collector. How do you call that? Tax collector? Tax office? Yeah. And it was a man and a woman. The woman was the good cop, the man was the bad cop. And I was lying on the floor crying, and I said the last 3 days I started selling my body because I have to pay you potentially and I can't do it anymore. And the woman gave me a hug and said, don't do that, please don't do that. It's never worth doing that. So that was probably the low point. I didn't have to pay that much. I had to pay 10,000 in the end, and that was fair because I didn't pay my taxes on that. So I paid my 10,000. I was happy to do so, and I started walking away from all of that, and I was like, I can't do that anymore. It's too dark. Now, quite a while before that, I started realizing I've never been happy having sex with men. It never fulfilled me. It was always empty. I was always looking for something that I couldn't get. That father, I couldn't get a father in having sex with like muscular guys. And most of my friends are straight, and I thought, come on, that can't be worse. Like having sex with a woman can't be worse than with guys. And I thought, but how can I figure out if that is possible for me? And I need you to think about that, because there are real issues for men and women that are same-sex attracted but would like to live a different lifestyle. How do you do that, especially if you're Christian? At this point, I wasn't practicing Christian. And the only thing that I thought I could do was going to a brothel. Because I thought, if I go to a bar and just try to meet a woman, what am I going to say? Oh, I'm gay, can I try? So I went to a brothel, and it was an awful experience. But I could also tell, like from my soul it was a bad experience, but physically I was like, oh, that's how it's supposed to be. That feels biologically pretty accurate, pretty good. And then I started opening myself towards women and looking for relationships with women. I'm gonna shorten things a little bit. I moved to Scotland, and the isolation of living in Durness, where only 300 people live and everybody knows everybody and you're far away from the next city, definitely helps not engaging in gay sex anymore. Yes. It's the same with alcoholics. Don't go to a bar. Stay away from people that drink. If you are vulnerable, if a sin is sneaking around, is crouching at your door, stay away from it. Don't tempt yourself. And it's like that till today, like the porn websites and whatever. You have to stay away from it. So I built a house in the north of Scotland, and I don't know if you guys know what bowerbirds are. Bowerbirds are birds that build eloquent nests, and then they do a little dance in front of the nest to attract females. And I tried to do the same. But there are no women in Durness. and there were, of course I saw a lot of women because there are a lot of tourists, but they were only there for a few hours, and I can't meet a person like that. I don't go to the pub and meet somebody who's half drunk. I can't do that. I tried online dating, Tinder, for example, but Tinder doesn't work the way that you write, "Hi, my name is Philip. How many children do you want?" Because the thing is, I wanted a family. I didn't want experiences. I want to settle down. I wanted children. I wanted a family. And after many years, after 10 years of trying and failing, I reached the end, and I thought, okay, I'm going to subscribe to a Christian dating website. I don't know if I'm Christian enough, but I'm going to try. So I subscribed, and then a weird person from Botswana wrote me. It's like, "Hi, my name is Masedi." I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. I live in Scotland, she lives in Botswana. Now we're married and have 2 children. But on the way to that, I deeply hurt my now wife. I was incredibly critical. I treated our time together, she came over from Botswana, and I treated that like a job interview, and I'm not kidding. I'm like, I'm the boss, marriage is the job, you're the applicant. And I was incredibly critical, and it did not go well. And I hurt my wife so bad that she almost died. I broke her heart so bad that her heart literally stopped. At that point, she was back in Botswana. And when she regained conscience after, I think, 2 weeks of coma, she contacted me and she just said, I just hope that you're happy and that you find who you're looking for. And then I thought, Philip, you're the greatest idiot and asshole in the world. And I said, if you would still take me, please come over and let's try to have a family. And on my way to that, I had to come to terms with so many things in my mind, excuses of the past, like, oh, it has to be perfect, or, well, maybe I can't have a Christian relationship, I need an open relationship, because a woman can never give me what a man can. So I need to have that little door open. But nobody can give you everything, apart from God. So at one point you just have to say, that's my partner. I don't need more, I don't need everything, I need this. So, at the end, I just want to tie that together with my journey into Christianity, because along that, I became a Christian. Not just knowing God, but actually listening to God, and also learning humility, which I didn't have before. About 6 years ago, I started going to church in my village in Durness. And it was a lovely minister, and the congregation was very open. And the only reason I started going to church was really because I thought I should participate more in the community. And nobody judged me. Everybody knows my background. Nobody judged me. Everybody was just happy to see me. And I listened and I took it in, but I did not read the Bible. I listened to it when somebody talked about it, but I didn't read it. Then we got a new minister, and she was not really what I needed. She doesn't take the Bible very seriously. She doesn't really follow it. And that pushed me towards reading the Bible. And that was the Church of Scotland. And at one point, the Church of Scotland decided to allow same-sex marriage. And both my wife and I, we said, we can't. I lived this life. And it's hard. It's hard to reject the sin that's constantly nagging on you without the support of the church. If the church says, no, you can do that, even though I know it's wrong. So I had to change. And now my wife and I, every Sunday, we drive 2.5 hours from Durness to Inverness, and we go to the Free North Church. And we have a wonderful family, with this church family there, with many children as well, with people that really believe in the Bible, and people that can give me guidance. And if I should ever need help on my path, I can not only talk to my wife, which I always can, but also to my minister and to other members of my church family. And that is incredibly important. just like I sometimes help people that get in contact with me because they know my story, and then they say, I struggle with something similar. Can you talk to me? And I'm terrified that at one point I will not be able anymore to help people because the Scottish government says you are not allowed to change your ways. I changed my ways. I didn't change them because some minister told me. But I'm terrified of a time when nobody's allowed to help me. And when, apart from God, I'm all by myself. Because sometimes you need somebody, a person who can hold your hand and who can talk to you and say, I'm here for you and I support you. Thank you very much. I'm probably totally running over time, right?
We've got 5 minutes for questions if you want to. If
Yes.
anyone wants to ask a question, we're just 5 minutes if anyone wants to ask anything like that.
You can ask anything.
What brought you to Scotland?
In my speech, I mentioned a couple of times that I felt God talking to me and telling me what to do. I felt that when I first came to Scotland. I arrived at Stirling train station on a rainy midnight, and I was like, oh, I'm supposed to move to Scotland. Yeah, doesn't say anything about Stirling train station though. Yeah.
I've spoken to several, possibly a lot of same-sex attracted Christians who hold to the view that they were born same-sex attracted and they choose to be celibate, and in doing so, they're honouring God. Can you speak into that? Because you've chosen to remain celibate and have an opposite-sex relationship.
So, which means I'm not celibate because I'm committed to my wife.
Never gone down the road of same-sex relationship.
Yeah. So I did obviously until 5 years ago. So 5 years ago is probably when I completely ended any same-sex contact. I think it's possible that we are born gay because we are all born in sin. So we are all born broken. Nobody, we're no different. I'm broken in a different way than you guys are broken, but we're all broken. I do think that we experience trauma in one way or the other, and I think some of the trauma we will never remember because it happened when we were very, very young. My father told me about 4 or 5 years ago that when I was born, all of a sudden my brother received less attention and love. And so my father, and he listened to a radio program, and in the radio program they said it can lead to trauma in older siblings when a younger sibling is born. So my father started to focus on my brother intentionally because he thought Philip gets enough love. Maybe that led to that separation, I don't know. But when I deal with my children, I try to remember that, and I'm like, I have to be there for them fully. But with the celibacy, I think celibacy is one way, but I think if you can find somebody who doesn't judge you, who wants to help you from the bottom of their heart, try to find a partner of the opposite sex and start a family and marry. But that only works if your partner doesn't judge you. So my wife, she was born with HIV. And when we started talking, she Googled me. She found out about me that I did gay porn. And she became unsure. And in Botswana, she went to a Christian prophet. And she asked him, so I met this man, is that safe? And he said, this is a good man, this is the right choice for you, do not be afraid, it will not harm you, so to speak. That's why she decided. And then she said, I Googled you, but I have to tell you something as well. I'm HIV positive. And I said, I don't have a problem with that. And I think because we both had that trauma, we could fully accept each other. And this is something not just about same-sex attracted people. You have to truly love each other. It's not enough to be in a heterosexual marriage. That's not enough. You need God, and you need to truly love each other, understand each other, respect each other, listen to each other. Otherwise, the devil can always destroy the marriage. It's no difference between your marriages and my marriage. Thank you very much.
Well, that's two amazing stories, isn't it, so far? And the reason that these stories have been told, obviously, it's great to hear Mary's story, it's great to hear Phil's story. But then I say, Mary's story, the Scottish government and the UK government hear Mary's story and think, right, she needs stopping. You know, she needs locking up if necessary to stop her doing what she did. Phil's story as well, that the UK government and the Scottish government would hear Phil's story and think he needs stopping. If he thinks he's going to help other people along this road, we've got to stop him doing that. That's the real issue. So they wouldn't hear that story and think, isn't that wonderful? They think, oh dear me, what are we going to do to make sure this sort of thing doesn't happen in other cases?